Hello and welcome back to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks. Back to look on a weekend of Scottish football that was just, it's usually turbulent in Scotland, but this weekend just taking it to a completely different new level. We had players in Dubai testing positive for COVID, shock horror when you're going abroad in the worst week of a global pandemic. You had football cancelled, and you also had Premiership fixtures along the way. So plenty going on this weekend and into the Monday. Obviously, football on the Monday night means the calendar extended a wee bit. But if you haven't subscribed to our channel to keep up to date with all the madness, do remember to do that and like this video. Obviously, fixtures spread out across the weekend, and we'll go through them now. On the Saturday, Dundee United versus St Johnstone was postponed due to a frozen pitch. 4 hours later, Dundee played Bonnyrigg Rose in the Scottish Cup across the street. Make of that what you will. Kilmarnock 2, Hamilton 0, St Mirren 1, Motherwell 1, and then on the Sunday, Aberdeen 1, Rangers 2, Livingston 3, Ross County 1, and then on the Monday, Celtic 1, Hibs 1. Leaves the table looking a bit like this. Rangers and Celtic occupy the top 2 spots, although it looks more and more likely that it will be Rangers who win the Scottish Premiership this season, their gap at 21 points. Aberdeen and Hibs occupy 3rd and 4th. Livingston, who don't seem to be able to lose football matches, sit in 5th with a little gap between them and Dundee United now in 6th. Kilmarnock 7th, St Mirren 8th, St Johnstone and Mull 9th and 10th, and the bottom 2 are occupied by Hamilton Accies and Ross County. We'll just get straight into it, so much to cover and managers to hear from. Starting with the action that didn't happen, Dundee United versus St Johnstone, which as you watch this will be played this evening on Tuesday. But that one was called off at the last hour, really half one in the day. This one was called off due to a frozen pitch. Many games called off at the weekend due to the freezing weather conditions, but this one perhaps one that was met with the most scepticism. Some of the park frozen at Tannadice, apparently not able to get it thawed out in time, but the real sticking point came from the fact that Dundee managed to play Bonnyrigg Rose in the Scottish Cup directly across the street at Dens Park just a few hours later, claiming they wanted to give it some time and play the game later in the day. St Johnstone saying they didn't want to do that. St Johnstone released a pretty heavily worded statement at the time. A bit of to and fro from both clubs, but I think this Tayside derby will go ahead this evening, and still a really important match. St Johnstone watched teams below them in the league, obviously. Beat Mull, picked up a point in Ross County as well, getting beat at the weekend, so perhaps a wee bit of a chance for them to move up away from that sort of relegation zone, so something they'll be looking towards to do. Talking about teams in the bottom 6, we have Kilmarnock versus Hamilton, and a Greg Kiltie-inspired performance. Won that one for Killie, his 2 goals, bit of inexperience, and you'll hear Brian Rice speak about that for his second, but nonetheless, a good victory for Alex Dyer's team, who go 3 unbeaten now after a really torrid run of 5 games without a victory. For Hamilton, again, injuries and COVID just catching up with them. It never seems to stop. Probably the team has been affected by that on a more regular week-to-week basis. It must be said through no fault of their own. Aaron Martin at 11:30, track and trace protocols, ruling him out of this one at Rugby Park. Brian Easton missing as well, which meant a really inexperienced defence and a generally younger Hamilton squad, which is already fairly young, featured against Kilmarnock. So a 2-0 defeat for them, which was a bit of a disappointment off the back of recent results. But we heard from Alex Dyer and Brian Rice at the end of that one. Alex Dyer praising Greg Kiltie's contributions in that, while Brian Rice ruined a bit of inexperience in his side.
Yeah, good performance, start to finish. We were excellent. For now, we worked very hard, which we have been doing over the weeks. We took our opportunities when they came today, and happy days all round. Yeah, definitely. We controlled the moments well. When we scored, we settled down. We didn't concede straight away. Like I said, we were comfortable all afternoon. It was just hard work. Kiltie was excellent. He set the tone all afternoon. He worked hard. Scored 2 good goals, and all-round performance. He was brilliant, and then that just triggered everyone else off, And like I said, everyone worked extremely hard. We showed good quality. We passed the ball very well, and to be fair, they couldn't live with us today. Yeah, definitely. Greg's been good all season for us. Like I said earlier, he had a bad injury. He was out for ages, and just started to come back. He's had a good pre-season. First time he's really had a good pre-season where he wasn't injured through pre-season, and he's come through and he started the season well. He's stepped him outside a couple of times, and he's come back in. You know, and he looks a good player for us. You know, and he's a killy boy. He's one of their own, and it's good to see. So may that continue. But like I said, obviously Eamon's gone now. I wish him all the best. I had text from him this morning, so we changed text this morning. He's on his way. I wish him all the best, and hopefully now we can push on and put that one to bed.
I think there wasn't a great deal. And I come on up with a better team. First half, the second half, we're starting at 1-0, giving it a go. I mean, remember we hit the bar at 9 each. You know, but a bit of inexperience cost us the second goal. I think Jamie Hamilton done something very rash. He didn't normally do, but you know, we missed our main two centre halves today for the last two clean sheets. Brian Easton was injured last week and came off, and Aaron Martin got caught up in a track and trace situation. I passed 11 this morning and I found it, you know, so that changed things a bit. And I think a wee bit of inexperience in the centre of defence cost us today. You know, I says to the kid there, and he just said he didn't see him. You know, it is inexperience, you know, but they need to learn, and they need to learn quick for that, because you know the situation we're in, the things I've spoken about before, so it's not clearing up, and it's worse today. So you know we need to learn. No, it's not just us who's got problems, but we've got it severe, you know, and it's going to happen to other clubs. But you just can't get that wee run. We have the same team, the same people available. You know, up across county with a great result the following two games, and us Callaghan and Murphy for that team. 2 clean sheets. I missed my 2 centre halves today. You know, we just can't get that wee break where we've got the same selection.
St Mirren won, Motherwell won in the other match. A fairly contentious decision. The main talking point from this one, it looked as if Graham Alexander was going to have a victory in his first game as Motherwell manager, but Bobby Madden pointed to the spot with 10 minutes to go. Lee Irwin brought down in the box by Bevis Mugabe. From where I was sitting in the stands, it certainly, you heard the contact from Bevis on Irwin, and it looked for all the world from our angle that it was a penalty. Looking back on it and in replays, then it pretty much shows that Bobby Madden got this one wrong. Lee Irwin sort of just falling to the deck. I don't think he quite dives, but he just sort of falls down quite aimlessly. And then Bobby Madden points to the spot, and Jamie McGrath doing what he does, scoring from the spot, his 7th goal of the season. Takes a point for St Mirren, and a team that it just seems to be happening for them right now. They weren't at their best, probably one of the poorer performances in recent months, but much like the game against Kilmarnock, where they all got a point despite not playing well, something just about fell for them and they got the result. So Jim Goodwin will be fairly pleased with that, and we heard from him and the new Motherwell manager Graham Alexander at the end of that one. Jim Goodwin saying the point was fair, while Graham Alexander has had a look at the penalty decision again.
Bittersweet. I think the first half was really good for us because, like I said before, we'd only had about 50 minutes with the team yesterday. We tried to put good ideas and we saw those bear fruit. I think the second half we forgot the things that we'd done in the first half a little bit more and allowed St Mirren in a little bit more territory without really hurting us. I think I had one chance, but I'm really happy with the way the players took on board the limited information yesterday and actually put it into practice, and I could see why it sort of dissolved in the second half, because maybe a bit tired, the game's going on, but we want to, the minds playing games need to hold on to win the lead, and but I think if we really kept our what we did in the first half, I think we would have won the game, but I think we've been harshly dealt with the penalty. I thought it was coming a little bit because of the influence. I felt, there was a lot of noise on virtually every challenge. I mean every challenge, personally. But I have seen it back, and it's limited touch, if any at all. And I feel for the guys in there, because I don't think they deserve to score. I think it's Bevis, but obviously I've watched it back from the camera, and you don't have to see anything. I'd love to see what we do. We've got to take it on the chin and go again and get some good training to boys this week, and try and focus on the positives. And you sort of say, we had some real good chances. Should have, probably could have been 2-0 up at half time with Tony's header.
I thought first half, I thought Motherwell were a better team, and caused us a number of problems. Jack Hannock makes a great save from a decent ball in, and the goal, you felt like the goal was coming. Motherwell were on top at that point. Set plays in the first half we struggled with a little bit as well, in terms of the way that Motherwell had set up. And the delivery coming in was really, really good. So I was actually quite happy to get in at 1-0 at half time, because we hadn't played anywhere near what we're capable of. We went too long in the first 45 minutes, too early. The second half we asked them to go and shorten the passing a wee bit and just try and get the likes of Doyle, Hayes and McGrath on the ball, because they are our best players, and they're the ones that ultimately will be the creative ones for us. So I thought we've done that a lot better in the second half. Although we had a number of attempts on goal in the first half, it didn't work Liam Kelly at all, which was disappointing. Second half I thought we were a lot better. I thought we controlled the majority of the second half. A great chance with Errahan at 1-0, and just waiting for the net to move, but unfortunately just goes by the post. And then we get the penalty, which I thought at the time it was a penalty. I definitely heard a sound of contact. I haven't had a chance to watch it back yet, so pleased to get the penalty, which obviously has earned us the point, but I do think over the piece the point was probably fair. Why it had to be me. I don't know. Listen, Bobby Madden's a top referee, hence why he was the one chosen for the Old Firm a couple of weeks ago. In my opinion, he's one of the best in the country. And I thought he had a decent game. I did. I mean, if he's not made the right decision on this occasion, then surely the first one to hold his hands up. But certainly I felt that Lee Irwin had himself between the ball and the defender. It sounded like the defender kicked through the back of his calf, and you could hear almost the boot kind of contact. So at the time I thought it was a penalty. And I think if we get the Ethan Errahan one, at that time I felt we were really on top of the game. And we tried to go and keep going toward the end to try and get the winner, but unfortunately it just wasn't happening.
On to this Sunday, and Aberdeen 1, Rangers 2. Aberdeen's form perhaps flying under the radar a wee bit in terms of results, whilst performances perhaps could be better. They have only lost 4 games this season, the last of which came against Rangers, but again, Rangers were the ones to beat Aberdeen, so that's 3 out of the 4 defeats for the Dons this season that they have lost to Rangers. It was an uphill task for them, really. I mean, Rangers dominated the sort of early stages, although Aberdeen could have been in front through Sam Cosgrove. But the game really changed when Ryan Hedges was sent off. I mean, he came across Alfredo Morelos, Derek McInnes saying John Beaton explained to him why in the laws of the game that had to be a red card, and the Aberdeen manager did agree. James Tavernier, weirdly enough, did miss his penalty, and rarity for that, but it wasn't to be much of a let-off for McInnes and his side, as Alfredo Morelos scored 2 on either side of half-time to give them the victory. Matty Kennedy scored his first goal of the season, but with the man disadvantage, it just proved to be a bit too much for Aberdeen, and not a disastrous result. They have only lost 4 games over the course of the season, albeit perhaps some performances have lacked a little bit of bite and just a bit of sparkle that Aberdeen fans want to see. The big one for them will be on Wednesday night when they travel to Livingston for that rearranged game. Livingston creeping up behind them now, albeit they are 9 points away, but if they win that one, then it's 6 points. And the way Livingston are playing just now, winning every game so far under David Martindale, you would not rule them out of breaking into that top 4 on current form. Speaking about the Lions, we'll talk about their 3-1 success over former manager Ross County. Scott Robinson just has turned into prime Lionel Messi in recent weeks. Another lovely dink over 6'7". Ross Laidlaw before Birmingham City loanee Charlie Lacken got Ross County back level. Livingston weren't at their fluent best as they have been in recent weeks, but it didn't matter because as they brought people on from the bench, that completely changed the game. Alan Forrest scoring first before Hamilton came off the bench to seal the victory. Another impressive one for David Martindale. He's won every single game since taking over as manager, and when Gary Holt resigned, people didn't really know if Livingston could improve. Gary Holt was seen as a decent pair of hands to keep them in the league, even though David Martindale was seen as a fairly obvious successor for that. I don't think anybody could have predicted just how well he has done. And they look, if on current form, if they keep winning at the rate they are, if they beat Aberdeen on Wednesday and perhaps playing a depleted Celtic team, which will go on to in back-to-back double headers, you could see them start to rack up victories against some of Scotland's best before a League Cup semi-final. And on current form, you would probably have to argue that they are the favourites for that. Ross County, on the other hand, John Hughes, you have to admire him, saying he didn't just want a point away against a team who won 8 or 9 victories on the bounce. He either wanted 3 points or no points, and he completely went for it, even though if Ross County had maybe sat back a wee bit, they maybe could have taken a point from this one. But he went for it, John Hughes, and you have to admire that when they're down near the bottom, but it didn't pay off for him in the end. We heard from Yogi Hughes and David Martindale at the end of that one. John Hughes is disappointed with the result, and usually I'd give you a wee introduction to what the interview is going to be about. I don't think I can do that for David Martindale. Just take a listen to these 2 clips.
I thought so. I thought we scored a good goal. It's probably a bad goal from their point of view, but it's something we worked on in training. So we scored a great goal. I think we Robbo takes it extremely well again. And then we were disappointed with Ross County's goal. It's a shot that falls to, it's a bad shot that falls to one of their players, so it catches off guard a wee bit. He's done one each, but tell the boys to keep sticking to the game plan. And I thought the second half we dominated most of the possession and we got just rewards, albeit a little later on in the game. But I thought the subs made a massive impact. Jet came on, he's linked up for Alan Forrest, who scores, and then the third goal, Alan's beat his man and played it in for Jack Hamilton, who was a sub. So the 3 subs at the hand in the 2 goals, so it was really pleasing. No, I think that Stephen Effie's in the team, I've got to be vocal. So, I don't know if you see what I see. Alan's my favourite, so I like shouting at him. So when Alan's on the park, Jack's just came back to his 5, and Big Jack's still learning the game, so you actually need to shout the trigger sometimes, like Jack, and instantly he knows what you're wanting and he'll do it, but sometimes he can watch the game, and Jet are just like shouting at him. Which is Rogers must have done that.
New manager.
Alright, sorry.
Rogers lost it.
You caught him on the hop here. Google.
Premiership manager. You did, yeah.
Honestly. That's the boys. It's the boys. I think they have a bit of credit, but it's the players. Yeah, I'll go home, I'll have a cup of tea, my missus will tell me to do the dishes. That's what will happen. But no, I'm just delighted for the boys. Like, honestly, really delighted for the boys. The changing room is absolutely buzzing. My team talks are so easy, they're so short. After the game, we've done the last 4 games. Dale, what's the song? No, Jaja or something. I go in, they don't have that, turn the music on, they turn it on and they all go in, they dance in a circle, I turn it off and well done, see you tomorrow. It's a good changing room. You would like it, Patsy.
We need to get them back. Where we are right at this moment, I've always said that if we can get all the players in the injury room and on the training pitch and get numbers to pick for, we've got 1 or 2 trialists in that have, you see the buzz about them and what's going on, competition for places, and we need that. We need everybody, all hands on deck, everybody to now to the end of the season, and we'll be all right. I keep saying this, I don't know, you don't know what will be, but I guarantee you, every team we play against will never been in a game, and that was certainly the case today. On another day we could have nicked it, but saying that, it might have been a little bit hard on Livingston because they were a better team second half, and we couldn't get off the pitch, that's why we had to change it. I'm delighted, I had Tony at Livingston when I was saying you could see the talent that he had, and we went on his ventures away doing 100 goal, we ended up at Norwich and Coventry and all that stuff. he's a good professional, very good professional. He'll have a big part to play for now at the end of the season. As all of the most important thing is, I'm in it with them all, we're on it together, but I'm fully aware that when you're a player, no player, you know, you take the hump, that's what happens. Everybody has to be in together, because whoever it is that's no playing, their chance will come, and when it comes, you need to go and do the business. And they've got that spirit amongst them. I can see my substitutes, they're willing their teammates on, they're all going to play a part of it, and there's a good spirit amongst them. And that's basically in a nutshell.
Well, apologies for that one that you didn't get subtitles with it, but we're sure you just about made out what was said clearly enough. On to the Monday night fixture, and well, Monday was just an interesting day for Scottish football, I think it'd be fair to say. We will cover some of the topics that did happen in future videos on this channel in the weeks ahead. Obviously, it should be noted as well before we go on to the Hibs Celtic debacle that obviously Scottish football below the Championship did get suspended for 3 weeks until the end of January, and as well as that, the Scottish Cup is suspended. Ties are set to be played on the 31st of January, but given that football is now suspended until at least February 1st, those ties are going to be played. Who knows when they'll be played. But even with that bombshell news, that still somehow managed to not be the main talking point of the day, as Celtic's COVID cases sort of had a massive impact on Hibs. Of course, here Not Loath Firm will focus as much on the Not Firm teams as we can, but it is hard to ignore the potential ramifications and the storylines this has brought up, not just for Celtic, but for the whole of Scottish football. To give a sort of slight breakdown of what had happened, Celtic flew to warm weather training in Dubai in the worst week of the pandemic. Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister, brought in travel restrictions for those coming back from Dubai. So if you fly out to Dubai and you come back, you now need to self-isolate. That wasn't previously a requirement, but it is now. So Celtic have still gone out there. They have came back with travel restrictions in place, a national lockdown. What could possibly go wrong? I hear you say, well, I mean, everything that could have went wrong, went wrong. To be fair, now this might seem like a very obvious point, but if Celtic had managed to not get a positive test out there, it would have just went by as morally wrong in the circumstances. Fans can't get to stadiums. Fans can't, never mind stadiums, fans can't see families just now under the current circumstances, and haven't been able to see families for nearly a year now. And Celtic are away out in Dubai. Who knows? I mean, Motherwell stayed at DL Park, Hibs stayed at Trannan, Hearts went to the Oriam, Hamilton trained on their pitch. So all the teams had exuberant places to go, but Celtic decided to take it one step further by going to Dubai. But everything sort of collapsed on Sunday when Christopher Julian, Celtic defender, had a positive test, and that brought up the question of whether more would have to self-isolate, linking back to the Scotland under-21s fiasco earlier this season, where coming back from an abroad trip to Greece, I believe, a load of players had to self-isolate due to the contact and tracing on the plane. Mull heavily affected by that, as were Aberdeen. Turns out Celtic were even worse in this scenario. Neil Lennon and John Kennedy, Celtic manager and obviously former Hibs manager, having to isolate, as well as pretty much half of the Celtic senior squad and first team squad. That brought up more cases for Hibs in terms of, did they even want to play this game? Was it safe to play this game? Those questions probably will come further to the light later in the week. Hibs players had some reservations about playing in this game. It was the first time, according to Jack Ross, the families of the players had actually expressed consent in them playing in this game. And although there has been bigger outbreaks at clubs, I mean, St Mirren, Kilmarnock, Hamilton, a lot of teams have had 4 and 5 players testing positive, but none of them have been perhaps as self-inflicted as this. Celtic, in their statement, saying that it could have been picked up in Scotland, and while that is the case, swanning off to the Middle East in the middle of a pandemic definitely heightens your risk of getting the virus. And given Celtic as well have some of the best training facilities in the country, it just makes this decision all the more ridiculous. And Hibs players probably right if they did, none of them did, but if some of them did decide they didn't want to put any risk involved, because I don't think that can be fully ruled out as of yet until the next round of testing comes back, then they probably would have been given a free pass for not playing in this one. But football did eventually commence and Hibs got a point. Celtic's squad perhaps not as weak, at least the starting 11. The bench was full of young players, but the starting 11 was still fairly strong. The likes of Callum McGregor, Tom Rogic, David Turnbull, Ismail Soro, all featuring in that one. And it looked as if Hibs were going to suffer a fourth straight defeat. David Turnbull's really brilliant free kick into the top corner, looking as if it had sealed 3 points for Celtic, but Kevin Nisbet in the last minutes of the game getting one past Shane Duffy with the nice assist for that one, and he poked it home. Kevin Nisbet said before the press on Thursday afternoon last week, I believe, that he believed he was going to score in this game and he will continue to score goals against the best, and he kept true to his word in this one, sealing a point for Hibs and ending a run of 3 consecutive defeats. So, well, the football did take place. It is far from the main talking point about this, and I'm sure we've not heard the last of what was and what probably will be remembered as one of the more controversial Scottish football fixtures in recent history. It'll be really interesting to see the backlash this sort of gets in the days following this. It should be said, we hope Christopher Julian does recover well from his positive COVID test. It's obviously not his fault or anybody's fault for catching the virus, but he was obviously put in harm. I think it would be fair to say. Hibs clearly not happy about the situation, and fingers crossed they can come out of this situation on the other side COVID-free. That's all we have got time for on this Premiership review. We hope you have enjoyed, and hopefully next week brings about some happier talking points, although given the current restrictions we're living under and the way Scottish football has been in the last week, I would seriously cast doubt about that. We won't have as much football to cover on Not the Old Firm's website, which you can still check out. It's a real shame, obviously, for the lower leagues. It shouldn't be underestimated how much of an impact that could have, especially if it does continue into February and beyond. We've spoken about Armageddon for these sort of clubs, but if it does last longer than 3 weeks, then sadly that is what we could be looking at. But Championship football and Premiership football does continue, and we will have plenty of coverage of both those leagues while they still operate on our website, on this YouTube channel, and on our Twitter. After this video comes out, you'll see a special interview we did with Lyndon Dykes, Scotland striker. He's gone from factory work to perhaps leading Scotland at the Euros at Wembley next summer in the forward line. A remarkable story, and he sat down with me through his journey from part-time football to where he is now at QPR. So probably one of the bigger interviews we've had on Not the Old Firm so far, so do check that out when it drops. All the boring PR stuff out the way, although ours wasn't quite as a disaster as some other clubs were this week. We hope you have enjoyed. Please do remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and until next time.